have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And as we are taping,
on Wednesday afternoon,
the Trump administration is readying its payoff to the religious right.
One of them.
An executive order on religious freedom that will hand them a right to discriminate against LGBT people and others. Our guest to discuss the constitutionality of this potential order and other legal issues is LGBT legal expert Art Leonard, who is Robert F. Wagner Professor of Labor and Employment Law at New York Law School.
And one of our favorites. It is Wednesday afternoon. This is supposed to happen Thursday morning. We can't know for 100% sure that it is going to happen or what it contains, but we're going to talk about it nonetheless. Meanwhile, Trump is promoting more anti-LGBT bigots to key posts in his administration.
On the bright side, the Supreme Court has again refused to take up a challenge to the law banning conversion therapy in California.
The leading pro-LGBT Republican in Congress is set to retire.
The Methodist Church has condemned the consecration of an out lesbian bishop.
And the Catholic Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina has some amusing thoughts about fake women priests.
Pioneering gay activist Ron Gold has died at the age of 87, and out playwright William Hoffman at 78.
And an Australian baseball star comes out on live TV.
We'll give you the LGBT angles on the Tony Award nominations.
And we'll review Bandstand, A Doll's House Part 2, 6 Degrees of Separation, Anastasia, and a once forgotten play by J.S. Priestley.
J.B. Priestley.
I'm sorry,
It's all right.
I was looking at something else.
He's dead.
Yeah.
But we're still alive, amazingly, more than 100
moment.
days into the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Welcome, Arthur Leonard.
The big news this week, and it could be really big, is this purported executive order that Trump is supposed to sign tomorrow morning as we're taping. Our viewers will be seeing this after that time, to expand religious freedom. Now, there were rumors he was going to do this in February. Then the rumor was that the lovely Ivanka and Jared had told him not to. But now the religious right has ginned up its power again. And on the National Day of Prayer, they're going to get him to sign this executive order.
And they're happy about it.
And of course, the idea of having a National Day of Prayer event in the White House obviously violates the First Amendment, too.
Horrible.
Yes.
We haven't seen the text, but the talk about it in the press at the moment is that it is virtually identical to what they were proposing in February, with maybe some small fixes. What do you surmise about this executive order?
Well, I have the February document that was leaked, and assuming that what they do tomorrow is to put forth something very similar, it seems to me it raises serious questions under the First Amendment, under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. It's
not to mention general standards of human rights.
Well, it violates separation of powers in some respects. It seems to me that he's trying to take the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which has been upheld by the Supreme Court.
Which was introduced by President Clinton.
Right.
Which we don't oppose.
As a remedy for a Supreme Court decision.
Yourself, yeah.
There's a remedy for a Supreme Court decision that drastically reduced protection for religious liberty. An opinion by Justice Scalia, by the way. So it surprised people that he was going to abridge religious liberty. But this, the idea is to authorize federal employees to go that extra mile as far as they can go to bend over backwards to accommodate free exercise of religion. In all the decisions they make about federal contracts, about administering federal programs, for example, federal monies that might go to a religious agency that's doing adoptions. Under this, they would be free to discriminate against same-sex couples who apply to adopt kids. It tries to do on the national level what legislative proposals have attempted in some of the states, like Mississippi, like a bill that's pending in Alabama. So it's...
I mean, somebody who works at the Social Security Administration who doesn't want to process a claim for a gay couple could pass it on to someone else. Isn't that part of this?
Well, would not suffer any adverse personnel consequence. And his agency would be charged under this order with accommodating his religious beliefs.
And that's why we call it a license to discriminate bill, because that's what it does. And it's not just LGBT.
Right.
It's women. It's going to have a big impact on reproductive freedom.
Well, it basically extends to anyone who has religious objections to anything.
Sincere religious objections.
But they're presumed to be sincere because it would violate the Free Exercise Clause to inquire into the sincerity.
So we don't
and
have
it doesn't have to be an official part of the creed of any recognized church or anything like that. It could be the church of one person.
Nor do they have to prove that they have any history of worship or attendance at any religious services. They simply have to state it because, as you say, they can't be cross-examined about it, and they can do what they want. And we have said for years on this program, when something like Kim Davis in Kentucky comes up, that people who are public employees must treat everyone equally, and that a religious opinion is not allowed to come into that public forum for public employees.
And there's been, actually this week, there's been a development in the Kim Davis case.
Yes.
Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals held that a gay couple who were turned down for a marriage license by her can continue to maintain their suit against her for violation of their constitutional rights.
For damages.
For damages.
Yes.
For damages. They don't need an injunction now. They're married.
All right. So let's go back to this executive order, though. The best example of a law like this that has been passed is the law in Mississippi.
Right.
And the law in Mississippi is in trouble in the courts, and in fact is on hold right now while it's being litigated, specifically because it singles out things. It says in the law that you are allowed to discriminate if you hold an opinion that opposes same-sex marriage, opposes extramarital sex, opposes abortion, and thereby establishes specific religious precepts. And the February version of this order did the same thing, right?
Right. It incorporated virtually the same language. It says that people are protected on the basis that they believe, speak, or act, or decline to act in accordance with the belief that marriage is or should be recognized as the union of one man and one woman. Sexual relations are properly reserved for such a marriage. Male and female and their equivalents refer to an individual's immutable biological sex as objectively determined by anatomy, physiology, or genetics at or before birth, and that human life begins at conception and merits protection at all stages of life.
Well, we'll see.
Anyone who is unalterably opposed to abortion and acts and speaks in accord with that is protected from any adverse consequences at the hands of an executive branch employee.
Or doesn't want to recognize transgender people or gay people.
So we'll see how foolish they are in terms of writing specifics like this. But once you write in something that says anyone's religious belief is, can be brought to bear on these situations, you don't really need to write any of these specifics, do you?
No, you can do it more general. In fact, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which was, as you said, passed by Congress. Clinton introduced it. It was passed by Congress, bipartisan, to establish the idea that if a government action burdens the free exercise of religion, it can only be justified if there's a compelling governmental interest and that it is the narrowest intrusion on religious practice that is necessary to achieve that interest. Now, this executive order says it shouldn't be assumed that something is a compelling government interest just because there's a law in favor of it. So it sort of opens up this idea of what exactly is a compelling government interest.
Plus, you have the Hobby Lobby Supreme Court decision, which vastly expanded the rights of corporate owners to assert a religious objection to, say, funding contraception in their insurance policies.
And we've seen Hobby Lobby now applied in an anti-transgender manner in an employment discrimination case. There's an appeal pending now from a decision by a federal district judge in Detroit holding that a funeral home, which was operated by a sincere, very devout religious man, can refuse to employ a transgender mortician who insists on dressing consistent with her gender identity. And the EEOC brought suit on her behalf.
Right.
And the judge said, well, the EEOC can't bring suit on her behalf because of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in the Hobby Lobby case. That's the federal government unduly burdening the funeral home owners' free exercise of religion.
Now, we're sitting here in New York, and many people are sitting in cities and towns across the country where our rights are protected on the basis of our sexual orientation
Local
and gender
law.
identity. How much could this federal order override that?
Well, Congress, under the Supremacy Clause, can pass statutes that override local laws. But the president, under his executive power, cannot unilaterally do that. An executive order is a directive by the president to the employees of the executive branch on how they are to carry out their functions consistent with existing federal statutes, regulations, and the Constitution. To the extent that he wanders beyond that, he doesn't have the authority, and the courts should knock him down.
Well, and the ACLU and Lambda Legal Defense and other groups are saying we will go to court the next day or as soon as possible. As soon as we can read this order, we're going to court to get it shut down. I asked on a call today, I said, do you need somebody who's harmed by this? They said, no, we can just go right in and try to get it put on hold, struck down, et cetera.
Well, if the president has this executive authority to make this direction to federal employees, is it challengeable?
Yes, it could be challenged on the grounds that it contradicts statutes, it contradicts regulations that are on the books. I mean, he can't unilaterally withdraw a regulation. They can unilaterally withdraw guidelines and memoranda and things like that, but a regulation which has been properly adopted under the Administrative Procedure Act is virtually like a statute. It's got to be repealed by the agency that promulgated it through a complicated procedure that takes time and requires publishing, notice to the published, getting comments, holding hearings, making new findings, and publishing a final version, which can then be challenged in the U.S. Court of Appeals.
And can this be challenged on basic constitutional grounds, that this violates the Constitution?
Yes, I think the argument can be made that this violates the Establishment Clause because government is supposed to be neutral with respect to religion. Government is not supposed to extend special rights to people to avoid complying with their legal obligations because of their personal religious beliefs. And we've seen this around the country. The Kim Davis case is just a dramatic example. There are some cases now out west of judges who are saying that they're going to refuse to issue marriage licenses, or they're going to try to set things up with their clerk to steer the gay couples to a different judge. And they're being taken up on ethical charges for not doing their job.
Well, we also have states like Texas that are trying to pass laws to negate the right of same-sex couples to marry. They're trying to nullify the Supreme Court decision.
Or
Which
at
under
least
the
their
Supremacy
benefits.
Clause, yeah, under the Supremacy Clause, they're going to have trouble there.
Yeah.
Because, well, the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution to require, first of all, in the Windsor case, back in 2013, the federal government must treat same-sex and different-sex marriages the same
Right.
for all purposes of federal law. And in the Obergefell decision, we have the same command to the states under the 14th Amendment. They must treat same-sex marriages the same as different-sex marriages. So this lawsuit in Texas, claiming that the state can provide lesser or no benefits to a same-sex marriage that they're providing to a different-sex marriage, is obviously contradictory to the Obergefell decision, and federal Supreme Court interpretations of the Constitution under the Supremacy Clause take priority over anything a state court might want to do.
I think people in these states who are claiming that they can, that the Supreme Court doesn't have this power, should be tried for treason.
Well, the treason involves waging war against the United States. That's a bit extreme.
Well, it's kind of
It's like the people who talk
warlike.
about impeaching President Trump.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
there
if
are
he-
grounds,
if he
but he
did-
has to,
if
he has
he
to commit
did-
high crimes and misdemeanors.
If
Yeah.
he did collude with the Russians on the
Well,
election.
But we do have an attorney general who wants a theocracy.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true, but he's not going to get it. The
Well, of
people of
course,
this country won't stand for it.
This is
I
all.
hope
This,
you're right.
This all comes this week with the religious right rating the president and giving him an A+ on his opposition to abortion, but giving him only a C+ on opposing gay rights and having appointed a couple of gay people here and there to some small positions and things like that, and maintaining the Obama executive order. So this is why they want and are demanding this payoff, and why they're saying to the press, we anticipate it's going to be good for us.
Well, it may be good PR for him with the religious right at the time he signs it, but he's going to be embroiled with litigation on this, and he's going to come off looking very bad, ultimately. Now, you know, one question is...
A man who has said what he said about the Civil War, it's hard to think of him looking even worse, but
Well, I thought,
That
you know,
would be nice.
it was interesting. He attributed to Andrew Jackson extraordinary prescience. I mean, 16 years before the Civil War, he died. But before he died, he was already disgusted about what was happening with the Civil War.
yeah.
Now,
That's a problem.
you have been appointed the Robert F. Wagner Professor of Labor and Employment Law at New York Law School just now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Robert F. Wagner was a great man, and you deserve this honor. And we should also point out, by the way, for our folks who want to read more that Art has written, he writes LGBT law notes online, and you write for the Gay City News, analyzing every legal case that comes down the pike. So check that out. But you talked, when you received this position, about the evolution of applying Title VII to sexual orientation discrimination. It's sex discrimination, but it includes sexual orientation and gender identity. And the fact that we're making a lot of progress on this, and if we can hold on to the Supreme Court just the way it is right now for another couple of years, we may get a new precedent on that. You said you don't like to make predictions, but...
But I think we are making incredible progress. We had this big victory in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals out in Chicago last month, and we now have petitions on file with the Second Circuit here in New York and with the 11th Circuit in Atlanta on the same question, and they're likely to be granted, and it's possible we'll win those cases. I think it's interesting when you look at the lineup of the courts. These are for en banc review, which means the entire bench of the circuit, not a three-judge panel. The Second Circuit and the 11th Circuit have an overwhelming majority now of Democratic appointees as a result of a very successful effort by the Obama administration, mainly in their first term, to fill pending vacancies. And a lot of judges who had been appointed by Ronald Reagan, you know, all these judges, they've been on the court since the 80s, and they finally hit retirement age, and all of these positions opened up, and Obama went to work, and he really filled them up.
We've also gotten a lot of support on these issues from Republican appointees.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Seventh Circuit case, a majority of the judges who voted that sexual orientation claims can be brought under Title VII were Republicans, and 4 out of the 5 were Reagan appointees who are hanging on there. You know?
So, I mean, the Equality Act in Congress was just reintroduced with, you know, as they like to say, 252 congressional sponsors, but that's Senate and House. We don't have a majority in either house.
And they're almost all Democrats.
Almost all Democrats. But if they rule this way, on Title VII, saying it covers us, is that sort of a judicial equality act for us in this country?
It is. The biggest problem with it is that if Congress is outraged by it, they can overrule it by simply amending Title VII. I don't think they would, and I think the Democrats in the Senate would really block that, trying to overrule such a ruling by amending Title VII. It would be better to get it in the Equality Act all spelled out expressly,
Well, and
rather
because
than by... But you know, getting it is getting it. And I think Title VII is very important for us because a majority of the states still don't ban sexual orientation discrimination in their state laws.
Right.
So people in those states, some of them who live in big cities have coverage, like Texas, for example. All the big cities except Houston, where they repealed it, all the other big cities in Texas ban sexual orientation discrimination. Similarly in Pennsylvania, various other states. If you live in a major metropolitan area, you're probably protected by local law. But those ordinances vary in how strong they are, what remedies they provide, whether you can actually go to court or you have to settle for an administrative
And not everyone does
process.
live in those areas.
Right, and so a lot of people, especially in rural America, a lot of people, if they encounter discrimination, their only hope is Title VII.
Well, we're going to talk about the other cases that are coming up this week, but I remain concerned about the exact impact of this executive order that Trump
It has a political impact. It sends a message. You know, it tells people that if they have religious objections to homosexuality, to same-sex marriage, to transgender people, abortion, they can feel free to go out there and the federal government is going to have their back. You know, that the federal government is lining itself up behind a certain religious point of view. And that is something that is so in violation of the spirit of the First Amendment, of the idea that government is supposed to be neutral with respect to religion, is not supposed to be either favoring or opposing religion. Just stand back, be neutral, be hands-off. And
so shockingly opposite to what we've experienced in the last 8 years with the support of the Obama administration in a way that was very moving.
And ironic that some of the moves the Obama administration made in terms of interpreting federal statutes and issuing executive orders were challenged by the Republicans as overreaching, and now Trump is reaching even further.
Hypocrisy rules the day.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you, Art.
You're most welcome.
We will keep an eye on what happens tomorrow and see where we stand and bring you back for more
And we'll
talk.
be looking for your analysis of the order in the Gay City News.
I'm sure it will be there.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we are on pins and needles here about what's going to happen tomorrow morning, but we don't know. You know, there's still a 1% chance that
But now you're prepared,
yeah.
no matter what happens.
Well, if it did happen by the time you see this, then you know how to feel about it, which is bad, very bad.
And I'm glad we talked about that Title VII stuff, about being covered by sex discrimination, because you write to us and you say all the news is bad, but it could be better on some of those issues. And now let's get to the bad news. The people that the Trump administration is appointing to who have these horrible anti-gay, anti-abortion records. I mean, really horrible. Well, we're hearing, another thing you may know by the time you watch this, that Mark Green, the senator from Tennessee, who has this horrible anti-gay record, was up for Secretary of the Army, may withdraw.
That's the good news.
Yes.
Because he's the one who is saying transgender people are evil and was trying to interfere with same-sex marriage in Tennessee and all sorts of horrible things, state senator there. So the fact that he is so egregiously bigoted is getting him in trouble, and he is expected to withdraw as the nominee for Secretary of the Army, which makes the third service chief who's withdrawn of Trump nominees for various reasons.
On the other hand,
yes.
Well, we'll get to the really bad ones. Then there's Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison from Texas, former senator, who they're looking at making U.S. ambassador to NATO, a zero on LGBT issues.
I'm more concerned about these people coming into HHS.
I am too.
There's going to be a new HHS spokeswoman, Charmaine Yost. She is a former employee of the Family Research Council, current and former president of Americans United for Life, an anti-abortion group.
She has repeatedly called transgender people crazy and creatures and shouldn't be around children.
This is the Health and Human Services
Please
Department.
don't ask me about transgender, she says. If you have a meat cleaver to your manhood, there would probably not be a fit between us because you would be crazy. I mean, this is, the stuff she's written is, she washed some of these things from her blog, tried to, but they were captured by clever people, so you can read them.
Now, she will be working for Tom Price, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, also very anti-LGBT.
Half the time a woman charges rape, she's faking, she says. Half the time.
These are important posts that have a lot to do with our health and safety, and
So depressing and outrageous.
and the new head of the Office of Population Affairs at Health and Human Services, Teresa Manning, says the government should not be involved in financing contraception or handing it out.
Well, they shouldn't, because contraception doesn't work. That's what she says. Contraception doesn't work, and she's going to be in charge of it. $286 million.
Oh, by the way, one of the things that's knocking out the Tennessee State Senator Mark Green as Secretary of the Army is that it's revealed that he's a creationist.
Oh, yes.
Not to mention all his bigotry.
Well,
He's
a lot of
creationist.
people have spoken out. He was going to have to face Senate review, and he was going to get asked all these questions. Now, he did issue some sort of a statement saying, everybody can serve regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, but you don't sound like a very nice man.
And I wouldn't trust that if I were looking to serve in the Army. Now, a few of you will be seeing this Wednesday night as we post it online. Most of you will see it later. But if you're seeing this before Thursday afternoon, we're doing a big demonstration at the Intrepid in New York because Trump is finally coming back to New York for the first time since...
He's not sleeping here.
No, because Melania said, no way, go to Bedminster.
New Jersey.
But I did
what's
write
the street? What's the street?
44th Street and the West Side Highway for the demo at like 4 p.m., whenever you can get there. It'll be going on a long time, the anti-Trump demo. And I wrote down a little list of some of the ACT UP did a demonstration, or Rise and Resist, 100 Days of Failure, noting the 100 days of the Trump administration. He rescinded the transgender school guidance. He's made many anti-LGBT appointments. There's Gorsuch at the Supreme Court. He canceled collection of data about LGBT people by Health and Human Services and HUD and the census. He revoked the Obama executive order on federal contractors complying with non-discrimination.
So he hasn't
laws.
been a failure. He's gotten a lot done.
The Department of Justice has changed its position on HB2 in North Carolina and a similar law in Texas. And one of the first things they did was erase any mention of LGBT people from the whitehouse.gov website.
Well,
we just don't exist.
Which is why I say, people say things. I mean, even Obama said this to him. Mr. Trump, if you succeed, America succeeds. No.
Well, they're not getting along anymore.
Yeah. If you succeed, America goes down the tubes because, Mr. Trump, you're for the wrong things.
Yes, exactly.
All right. But we still have the courts, and the Supreme Court of the United States did reject a challenge to the conversion therapy law in California. They just didn't hear the case, and they let the lower court ruling stand.
This is the third time that a challenge to that law has been brought to the Supreme Court, and the third time that they have rejected hearing
What
that
they said
challenge.
was, no means no.
Well, what the lower court decision said, the people who are challenging the ban on conversion therapy for minors by licensed medical practitioners, because of course pastors can still practice conversion therapy on minors, the opponents of the law said, well, you are violating the religious freedom of licensed practitioners. If they believe that conversion therapy works, they should be allowed to practice that. And the lower court said that the state banning that by licensed practitioners is not a violation of their religious freedom. This would be a nice model for challenging the Trump executive order.
So would that mean, like, if, since Catholics believe they can turn wine into the blood of Christ, they could market it that way and the Consumer Protection Agency couldn't do anything about it and say we're selling blood? I'm just saying, it's this insanity of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that the licensed practitioners of the federal government could probably not do that.
Think about it.
Okay,
Think
whatever.
about
In other legal news in Mississippi, interesting case, an older married gay couple.
Together for 52 years.
Yes, one of them died. They had a contract with a funeral home for disposal of the remains by cremation. But when the guy died, one of the spouses, and the paperwork was given to the funeral home, they realized suddenly, oh, he has a husband, and told the nursing home where he had died, oh no, we're not dealing with this, we're not going to touch that body, we don't deal with your kind.
Where have we heard that before?
Exactly. So now the surviving spouse is suing, but because there's no law in Mississippi or federally protecting us on the basis of sexual orientation, they're suing for breach of contract. So this will be another way to test out our legal rights.
How heartless can you be, is my question.
And one other legal issue, as you may or may not remember, in 2010, we had the Prop 8 trial in California over marriage rights for same-sex couples. And the brilliant judge there insisted that it be a full-blown trial with witnesses and a lot of testimony, and it was all videotaped. But the Supreme Court ended up saying that the videotape did not have to be released publicly, so it's been under wraps ever since. They took the transcript and made a trial play out of it, but the videotape has been secret. So now a television station,
KQED,
that's all right, in California, has gone to court to ask for the release of that video 8 years later, saying, come on, it's time to release it. So a lot of support for that. We'll see whether they get that and whether we get to see it finally.
In Louisville, this is very similar to the case of the funeral thing, really. A family court judge who sits in Barron and Metcalfe counties announced he's no longer going to hear adoption cases involving homosexual parties because he doesn't believe that's right to put a child with a gay person. So he's just not going to hear those cases anymore. Now, you know, if this is the way you feel, you need to be off the court completely because you are a prejudiced person.
Now, you found an interesting piece of videotape from the U.S. House of Representatives this week. A Texas representative?
Randy Weber. This also said it was National Day of Prayer at the U.S. Capitol. So Obama's doing one at the White House.
Trump.
Oh, Trump. Oh, what did I say?
Obama.
People make this mistake from time to time. Even
Wishful
on
thinking.
CNN. Trump. I don't like saying the name. So the National Day of Prayer at the U.S. Capitol. Listen to what Congressman Randy Weber said about what he's praying for.
Father, we've trampled on your institution, holy institution of holy matrimony, and tried to rewrite what it is, and we've called it an alternate lifestyle. Father, oh Father, please forgive us. Lord, we have gone to killing the most innocent amongst us. Your servant Moses warned in Deuteronomy 30:19 for us to choose life so that we and all our descendants might live. Father, we're killing our descendants, and we're calling it a choice. Oh, God in heaven, forgive us, please.
I don't know why the guys with the straitjackets weren't brought in for that. I mean, the guy is unhinged.
Oh, I think we've seen worse in the Capitol, but yes, that was a good example. In other political news, some debate over the fact that Florida Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen is going to retire. She has a very mixed record. She's
got a picture of her with her transgender son.
Yeah, and she has been completely supportive of her transgender son and very pro-LGBT, and one of the few Republicans who's with us on many, many, many issues. But she's also totally against abortion rights or reproductive freedom. She's got she of course is a Republican and has supported the Republican agenda.
She said I could win forever if I kept running. That's not true. The district is turning, and she was going to lose it too. So she's stepping aside.
Well, certainly there's a high possibility that she will be replaced by a Democrat.
Well, Hillary won it over Trump by 20 percentage points, the district.
Yeah,
the biggest margin of any Republican held seat in the country.
The Equality Act has been introduced in the House and Senate with over 200 sponsors, but they're all Democrats, unless Ileana's on it too. But don't expect any Republican support for this for a long time. I'd like to think we could shame them into it because their rhetoric is all about how they don't hate us, but I just don't see it happening.
Well, there are, I mean, as I said, they said there was something like 250 congressional sponsors. That includes both houses. I don't think it's as high as 200 in the House. Otherwise, we'd be pretty close.
Yeah, it covers both houses.
Right.
And 90 corporations have announced their support for it. And the other thing is that it's really quite a clever bill because it's not just us. It fixes several different civil rights acts for women and people of color and LGBT in various ways. It's a patchwork, but it ends up with a much more comprehensive civil rights landscape for everybody, and it really is an important law that should get passed.
Hello out there in America. What you could do is call your members of Congress, your 2 senators and your House representative, and demand that they get behind the Equality Act. Even if you know that they're very anti, let them hear from you and get behind this law. And even if they support it, tell them that you want them to keep supporting it.
In state political news in New Jersey, the unbelievable Chris Christie has actually signed a law expanding coverage of infertility services for same-sex couples and single women. Who knew?
In Connecticut, the Board of Regents has affirmed Title IX with the policy allowing students to use facilities aligned with their gender identity.
In Alabama, a House committee, now this is only at the House committee stage, it hasn't gone all the way, has passed out lesbian representative Patricia Todd's bill to remove from the state's school sex education curriculum the statement that homosexuality is a criminal offense, because it isn't. And in Louisiana, a House committee, again, has passed an expansion of domestic violence laws to include same-sex partners.
And do you understand this Tennessee bill that's been that's working its way through?
No,
that the
which is why I'm not going to
supports?
talk about it.
Okay. It's about plain language of statutes, and we think it's anti-gay.
It's an attempt. It's what Art Leonard talked about with defining, having laws apply to women as born women and men as born men, and therefore it screws around with transgender people and marriage rights and all sorts of stuff.
And also in the Congress, the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act was introduced by Congressman Ted Lieu and Senator Patty Murray and Cory Booker. And Ted Lieu said it's because LGBTQ people were born perfect. That was nice to read.
I don't know about that.
Well, born.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Okay.
Let's move on. We lost a couple of important people this week. One is Ron Gold. Ron Gold this is an amazing picture to begin with.
Well, the picture we're showing you is the founding of the National Gay Task Force. That's now changed its name to be broader. But let's just say who was there, right to left. I mean, Marty Duberman, Ron Gold.
Left to right.
Yeah, left to right. And in the back, there's Barbara Giddings. In the front, that's Howard Brown, who was the health commissioner of New York. Frank Kameny in the back, Bruce Veller in the front, and over on the far right, Nath Rockhill. These were the founders of the National Gay Task Force. And he was involved in the movement, obviously, before then, in the Gay Activists Alliance, in Mattachine.
Well, Ron Gold was a reporter for Variety, the theatrical paper, and then he got fully involved in the LGBT movement, which was then the gay movement. He was a very cranky guy.
Yes, he was.
But he was a very strong activist, and he was one of the founders of the Gay Activists Alliance.
And he was on staff as the communications director of the task force. And
Right.
in '77, I was working at NBC Radio, and we were going to do a gay show. And I called him up, and I said, could you give us a guest? And I said, okay. And he said, who else is going to be on? I said, well, there's this opponent of gay rights. He says, we don't do those anymore. 1977, he said, we don't do those anymore. We're not coming on and debating our existence.
Good for him.
And he hung up the phone. And I learned something. I pulled that line myself sometimes.
Yeah. He also was extremely instrumental in the American Psychiatric Association changing its policy on homosexuality.
He gave a speech in front of the association about it and really was considered one of the leaders of that fight. Now, that was a huge breakthrough in '73 for them to drop it. And a footnote to his life is that he was a juror on the Central Park 5 rape case, these guys were ultimately exonerated 20 years later, but he was the holdout juror, and they were going to kill him because he wouldn't do it, and they prevailed upon him to go along with the conviction.
Finally.
But he held out on that.
Yeah.
Some controversy around his later musings on transgender, which I will get into in my story about him in the Gay City News.
He was negative on the subject
Yes.
of transsexuality and transgender people, and he took a lot of heat for that. But he was a very opinionated guy, but a very effective activist early
he didn't
on.
think he didn't think there was any biological basis for sexual orientation. Didn't want to hear about that. Didn't want to hear about causes or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the other major loss this week was William Hoffman, age 87, also.
No, 78.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got it reversed.
Transverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was 78. I believe he died of a heart attack. He was best known for his 1985 play As Is on Broadway about the struggles around a gay man with AIDS. It was produced by John Glines and won a lot of awards and was Tony nominated.
Yeah, that and A Normal Heart, I think, were produced at about the same time.
85,
Larry
yeah.
Kramer's more political AIDS play, As Is, was more personal, but very, very strong and important.
And he was, he was a professor at CUNY and hosted.
He was an editor at Hill and Wang, and he issued Gay Plays, a first collection very early on.
And he was a librettist for opera, including The Ghost of Versailles that starred Renee Fleming. The first, in 1991, it was the first new opera there since opera work since 1967, and he was an Emmy-winning writer for his work on One Life to Live. So William Hoffman, a good guy.
Renaissance man.
Very good guy.
Yeah, all right. Religious news.
Well, we start in the Methodist Church. You know, they said they were going to leave these gay issues alone, and they went after Karen Oliveto from Denver, a married lesbian Methodist bishop. They rejected
In the middle there.
The High Court rejected her consecration, and but as I said, this was now the fact is the American Church would go along with this, but they have African and Asian congregations as part of their international denomination, and some are calling for schism as a result. We can't fund. Some people are saying, I'm out now. If you're going to keep doing this to gay people, I'm out.
They have left her in good standing at the moment, but they're going to adjudicate whether she should be suspended, forced retirement. This is just ugly,
Hateful.
stupid, horrible stuff.
Hateful.
And in North Carolina, there's an independent group called the Association of Roman Catholic Women Priests.
Yes.
Women priests, Catholic women priests.
Right.
They've been in operation for quite a long time. They've ordained a lot of women, and they've just ordained a woman in North Carolina. And we note it not because it's unusual, but because of what a local regular Catholic
The spokesman for the Catholic Diocese of Charlotte, David Haynes, said, I hope that Catholics in the diocese will understand that it would be sinful to receive a fake sacrament from a woman priest, and that includes attending a fake mass. He must be a Trump supporter. He likes that fake word.
Also in North Carolina, a Christian college, Montreat College,
Yes.
is forcing its faculty and staff to sign a promise to 24 hours a day in every moment of their life to oppose abortion, same-sex marriage, anything like that. 9 members of the faculty and staff are leaving over this. The students are upset about it, and they trace this to Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's heavily bigoted son.
Yes.
Makes Billy Graham look like a liberal.
Yes.
Franklin Graham is an alum of this college and gave them $100,000, and people assume that he had something to do with this pledge.
Are you allowed to think about those issues?
In South Dakota, Sioux Falls, the Union Gospel Mission threw out a trans woman from being a client at the soup kitchen or attending a church service.
Even the Salvation Army doesn't do that.
Oh my God. Because she showed up in a dress and
Or the
they
Catholic
said,
Church.
and they said, this is a man in a dress and we're not, even if it were a man in a dress,
Well,
so what?
I can top that.
Okay.
The Kansas City Catholic churches will no longer host Girl Scout meetings. Why?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're no longer compatible partners in shaping the lives of young women, and they're not even going with the lesbian issue because the Girl Scouts accept lesbians. They are focusing on the fact that they have that the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts has an association with International Planned Parenthood.
People, we live in a woebegone country.
Wake up. We have. I want to note a couple of anniversaries. Congratulations to the Advocate magazine on 50 years.
That's longer than us.
One
even.
of the most nerve-wracking acts of my life when I was a kid was going to the local candy store, and they had it on the newsstand that long ago, and I was a high school student, and I had to have a copy of that. It was just on the rack. And even though the guy knew me
You're
at the
one
counter,
of them compulsive gays.
I just had to read it. And he knew what it was when Julius, who ran the place, well, he was an old guy, he knew me. I said, no, I'm buying the magazine. Well, I had to read it. I had to read it.
Geez, you
they
didn't
have
even
the internets in those days.
You didn't even go to another town to buy it.
I was too lazy. And it's been 20 years since the coming out episode of Ellen premiered, a coming out that really had enormous impact in terms of people coming out, et cetera.
Congratulations to the Williams Institute, our LGBT think tank. They have a new executive director, Jocelyn Samuels, who was a high official in the civil rights divisions of both the Health and Human Services Department and the Department of Justice in the Obama administration. A lot of these Obama officials are now going to these nonprofits to, a big HHS official is now at Planned Parenthood, because they are not working in the Trump administration.
Shinanue, who was the gay spokesperson, is at that whole human rights consortium.
Well, Jocelyn Samuels was a real high official, not just a spokeswoman. And for her to run the Williams Institute now is a very, very big deal.
Okay.
And the New York City public schools now have a policy that every school must have at least one single stall restroom so that people who are not comfortable in either the girls' room or the boys' room will have a place to go. One single stall restroom in these huge New York City schools.
Well, this is for people who are either, transgender who don't want to get beat up in the restroom, or, anybody who's uncomfortable with the fact that, who does go into the restrooms. People used to get beat up in the restrooms in some schools.
Yes,
so
I
it's
know.
a little safety valve. I'm for it.
No, my objection is that there's only one. These schools are big facilities, and it's like Hidden Figures. Getting to one facility.
We're down to our last 9 minutes. Let's trip through some international news.
Well, do you want to celebrate the baseball player who came out in Australia?
Sure.
Ryan Jordan Santana for the Golden Grove Dodgers in Adelaide, Australia, came out on live TV.
He did this on a live television show. It was quite touching.
Made his teammates cry. And 11 Major League Baseball teams are having Pride Nights this year, most of them in June.
Okay. In St. Petersburg, the Russian police arrested 20 gay rights protesters who were protesting what's going on in Chechnya. Now, on the whole Chechnya thing, Trump didn't bring it up in his call with Putin.
No, but Angela Merkel did in her meeting with Putin.
In front of him.
Because gay activists in Germany had a sit-in for 48 hours outside her office demanding she do so, and she did.
And Putin's reaction is, well, if they've got a problem, file a complaint.
Please.
Go to court.
Marine Le Pen's father, the racist Jean-Marie Le Pen, is shocked that the Service for the Dead Gay Cop in France exalted homosexual marriage.
In New Brunswick, they've introduced a bunch of bills to add gender identity expression to family status.
That's in Canada.
Yep.
In Hong Kong, a gay man married in New Zealand wins a court appeal for government benefits for his husband.
Yeah.
In Guyana, the government is supporting a public referendum on non-discrimination because the legislature refuses to take a vote. We'll tell you more about Chechnya demos. Brighton Beach Pride, May 20th. Do you have any AIDS news? I do not.
Just the Trump Care bill, because it involves massive Medicaid cuts to 74 million Americans, and that's going to affect a lot of people with AIDS. And it really removes protections for 133 million of us who have pre-existing conditions.
In entertainment news, big trans film festival in Seattle starting this weekend for 10 days. Translations, 70 films from 20 countries.
Okay. Let's give you an entertainment news. Let's give you the LGBT angles on the Tony Awards. The lesbian-themed play Indecent is nominated for Best Play. Corey Hawkins, who plays a gay man in 6 Degrees of Separation, nominated for Best Actor. The gay AIDS-themed Falsettos, up for Best Revival of a Musical. Leading actor in a musical, Christian Borle, who plays a gay man in Falsettos, and David Hyde Pierce, who's an out gay man, is up for Hello, Dolly. Featured actor in a play, Nathan Lane for Front Page. Cynthia Nixon for The Little Foxes, featured actress in a play. And out gay Gavin Creel for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for Hello, Dolly.
And
did I miss anybody?
Yes, Closet Case Kevin Spacey hosting the awards on June 11th on CBS.
Not going to let you forget it, Kevin.
Ever.
Might as well come out.
He's out on this show.
I'm
Reviews.
coming out for Bandstand. I didn't know what to expect of this thing, but it's been a pretty depressing season as far as I'm concerned. And this was a really original musical about veterans coming home from the war, forming a band, and it's quite moving. And it really deals with some deep subjects. And if the music is really original, they're a swing band, but they don't just use standards. They write new songs. So I highly recommend that. A very appealing leads in Laura Osnes and Corey Cott. And Beth Lavelle is there also. And the boys in the band.
I have a shocking admission.
Yes.
I went to the theater voluntarily on my own.
With her own money. What did you see, Ann?
A Doll's House Part 2, because it had been so well reviewed. It is terrific.
What's it about?
It is a fantasizing of a follow-up to the Ibsen play A Doll's House, where Nora
slams the door on her family.
And walks out, and that's the end of the play.
Shocking.
Well,
is she back?
She's back in a modern version, modern language. That was Laurie Metcalf on the right, Chris Cooper on the left, if you want to put that up again.
Both Tony nominated.
All 4 people in the play are Tony nominated, and the play is nominated for Best New Play, and I'm voting for it if I could, because I loved it. It is very, very funny. It is very, very clever in its plotting. It has all sorts of twists and turns, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
I saw a show about romancing the Romanovs, Anastasia, on Broadway. It's based on the Disney musical, but it's got a lot of new stuff. Also, very appealing leads there. in Christy Altomare as Anya, and Derek Klina as Dimitri, and Mary Beth Peele, who plays the Grand Duchess, who got a Tony nomination in the Helen Hayes role there. It's the Anastasia story. It's
Is she the survivor of the Russian noble family or not?
But anyway, and I saw 6 Degrees of Separation, the revival of the John Guare play, Tony nomination there for Corey Hawkins as Paul. A lot of you saw the 1993 movie with Will Smith and Stockard Channing. Allison Janney in this, however, really shines in the role of Ouiza. This is about a family. This is based on a true story where a lot of rich families in New York got scammed by a guy who said he was Sidney Poitier's son and insinuated himself into their lives. And the people who play the kids in the show, the kids going to prep school or college, are absolutely hilarious in this thing. A little cartoonish, but hilarious. All right, and I saw a J.B. Priestley play called The Roundabout, part of the Brits Off-Broadway series at 59 East 59th. This is on the heels of seeing Fire Island, the television series.
Oh, you saw it?
I watched the first 2 episodes of Fire Island, and it's very similar. Put a lot of people who can't stand each other in the same house, country house, and see what happens. That's
the formula for all reality TV.
Well, that's what this play was like. There's a good reason that it hasn't been revived since 1933,
Well, we have a minute. Tell us what you thought of Fire Island.
I don't really like these kinds of shows. They're kind of predictable.
I know. I'm shocked that you watched it. Are you in your dotage? Or are you falling into stereotypes?
It was Sunday morning. I was just waking up, and it was being repeated, so I watched the first 2 episodes. But they're all so predictable in terms of, oh my God, this guy. They're going to introduce this horrible person who's going to irritate this person.
You couldn't pay me to watch that show.
You watch a lot of reality television.
I watch middle-aged women on The Real Housewives.
Okay, so I was watching
young gay Fire Island. Wow. Okay.
I'm not recommending it.
Good. Well, I am recommending A Doll's House Part 2. I really think you will be happy if you go see that.
And there's a new play coming about the communications between Truman Capote and Andy Warhol. Coming in the fall.
And in the non-gay category, I'm enjoying the 2nd season of Gomorrah on Sundance. That's the Naples Mafia. Excellent. We are going to go to Brighton Beach, Brooklyn on May 20th for the first Brighton Beach Pride. This will be, we're integrating the Chechnya stuff into this. This was created by the Rusa LGBT group, who are Russian emigres, and Brighton Beach in Brooklyn is the home of the Russian community in New York. So these LGBT Russian people want to take this fight against homophobia, particularly in light of Putin's anti-LGBT laws, et cetera, to Brooklyn.
I don't want to stereotype the people of Brighton Beach, but will I need to wear any body armor if I'm marching in this thing?
It is a permitted parade, and the cops are going to be there protecting it. Well, I'd like to think that people who have left Russia because they don't like Putin's policies would be more friendly to us, but we'll see.
By the way,
but May 20th, noon, Ocean Parkway and the Boardwalk.
I do watch Home Fires on PBS on Sunday nights. That's got a lesbian theme.
There are so many lesbian themes these days on TV.
All right, nice to see you, and we will be back next week, we hope, with better news.
If the Trump executive order has not wiped us out. All right, see you next week.
Bye.